Good afternoon, Team Edwards. Happy Friday. As usual, we're reporting live from the Center of the Aerospace Testing Universe. Chief Master Sergeant Ward-Swanigan here. Today, I have a special guest. I'm joined by Sergeant Lestrap from the Security Forces Squadron. We also have our medical professional, as usual. Colonel Westy's here. She's going to help us cover down on anything COVID related. We also have Captain Olenek available to take your questions, so please feel free to text in to the number that'll be provided at the bottom of the screen. It's 707-412-8922. So we have a couple of announcements today, and then we'll just roll right into our normal battle rhythm for our medical update and then the questions. So starting off, coming up this month of February, we're going to be doing a blood drive on the 1st of February. It's going to be at the Oasis Club, and there's going to be 2 sessions, one on the 1st and one on the 2nd. So look for details about that. But if you want to schedule an appointment, please go out to www.redcrossblood.org so that you can donate blood on one of those opportunities. On the 9th of February, look out for information on the Command Chief All Call that I'll be hosting. It's going to be a virtual 2-session event. We're going to do it in a tiered approach. We were hoping to get our younger airmen, guardians, and civilians on the 2nd session, and then we'll start the first session off with our NCOs and above and our civilian equivalents on that session. What I'm trying to do is actually get a chance to get everybody in one place, which will be virtual land in this case, to kind of talk about the things that I've kind of been kicking the can on as I've been waiting for COVID to let up and allow us to get in an auditorium or a hangar so that we can just let it all hang out. But unfortunately, I can no longer wait on COVID to get better. We just have to press forward and use the tools that are available to us. And I think a lot of what we do, to include this, in the virtual environment will be just as effective. We're going to be covering down on topics such as quality of life, childcare, housing, resiliency, diversity, equity, and inclusion, education and healthcare, and all sorts of things. So please look for the information that'll be coming out on the all calls that are going to be conducted on 9 February. There will be times for 2 different sessions. You'll have the opportunity to join one that's commensurate with your rank or your age group, and if you would like, you can also dial into both of them. It's up to you. But please feel free to chime in and ask questions in those sessions, and start thinking about those topics that I kind of mentioned, so that you can have your questions available for those times. So at this time, I'll kick it over to Sergeant Lestrap, who's joining us. We have February's African American Black History Observance Month coming up. So say that fast 3 times. So he's going to be talking to us about some of the things that the committee has put together as far as things that are going to be going on around the community and here on the base. So Sergeant Lestrap, over to you.
How you doing, Team Edwards? So next month is African American History Month, and we're going to have a few opportunities and events going on that Team Edwards can get out and participate in. So we will be sending out weekly informational reads through PA. This year's theme is health and wellness. So that will be the kind of the PA-driven messages that's sent out. And then following that, we'll have a panel with various leaders that our Team Edwards can get out and get some professional development as well as personal development. We will have a drive-in movie at Club Maroc. So if you guys have a movie of choice that you would like to see for Black History, please let me know. You can shoot me an email at christopher.lestrap@us.af.mil. And then we'll also have an open mic night. And then also with that, any participants that have any verbal arts that they would like to bring to the table, it'd be a great time to shoot me an email and let me know what you have planned for that. So PA will be sending out time, dates, and locations. So stand by for that. You should see that in the next few days. And we look to have a good month.
Awesome. So are you also looking for POCs, or do you guys have everything you need for that, or how can people help out with those events? Or
we have some POCs already. We have a team together. However, Team Edwards, teamwork makes the dream work, right? So just shoot me an email with your ideas, and if we can fill them for the next month, then we'll do that. So, it's not going to be subject to just the people that have been identified. So this is for you guys, not us.
Awesome. That's awesome. I look forward to being able to get out there and do that. You know, it's very important as leaders. So for us to get out there and participate and get in on some of that as well. So as you're putting those dates together, I try to get all of our committees for private orgs and observance months to make sure that the top 5 has an opportunity. So we would like to, bounce the calendars off to make sure that at least one of us can attend those. So
Most definitely.
I will definitely be getting with you to see once you get those dates identified and put out
Will do. Thank you.
who can cover down on those. So look out for that schedule, those events that are coming. I think that's awesome. And so we look forward to that. Thank you for sharing that with us. And please hang out. Don't leave. I love having somebody next to me, as we do this, because, going live and being on camera. It's not bad. I often say I need my own talk show, but then when you actually get up and you have to do it, it's a different story. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you joining me.
No problem.
So with that, Colonel Westy, if you don't mind, ma'am, can you give us the latest update on COVID or vaccines or whatever you have from Med Group?
Sure, yes, ma'am. So COVID in general is getting, the U.S. overall and even California, we have seemed to be reaching the peak. I will say that COVID has definitely been predictably unpredictable. So even though we may have seen the peak for this current Omicron surge, I can't forecast and say that we've definitely done that. But it does seem like cases are trending down a little bit. And even hospitalizations may be kind of flatlining or kind of trending down slightly. So that's kind of the good news. But obviously, even though cases may be declining, we are still having new cases. And it's going to be, people can still get COVID. So we still have to be very watchful and continue to do all those good COVID mitigations that we know how to do at this point. So people are still getting sick. People are still getting COVID. It may just not be as high of a case rate as we saw post-holidays, which is very understandable, right? People gather, and that's when surges happen. So with that note, knowing that Super Bowl is coming up, I've been told many times it's going to be in LA and of concern of our local area. Just be aware that with holidays coming up and Super Bowl and things like that, where you may want to gather again, just be very aware that we are still within this Omicron surge, and we still have to be very mindful of trying to limit gatherings as much as possible and trying to limit any kind of risks for that. But we are hopefully starting to see a little bit of decline for all this, just a little bit. Omicron has been noted to be a little bit milder of illness than some of the other variants like the Alpha or the Beta variant that had originally been for COVID. So the CDC did come out and say that. But even though it may, on average, be a milder case, it is still causing hospitalizations and still causing death, especially for those unvaccinated. So there's more and more reports and continuous reports and kind of the same story, right? If you're unvaccinated, you're definitely at higher risk of being hospitalized and dying from COVID, even with Omicron. So don't think that because Omicron may be a milder illness that you can't have severe symptoms or severe illness from it. So definitely, again, encouraging folks to get vaccinated. There's also some more studies showing that if you're not up to date with your vaccinations, I kind of talked about that last time. Up to date meanings that you've had a booster vaccine or that you've been recently vaccinated, so within the last 5 months with the mRNA vaccines. If you're not up to date with your vaccine, so if you haven't gotten your booster shot, please go do that. There's more studies showing that being boosted definitely does significantly reduce your risk of being hospitalized and also death, but also really of transmitting COVID and being able to transmit if you happen to get infected with the COVID. So definitely encouraging, again, to get your booster shot. That's available for anybody 12 and older. If it's been more than 5 months since your last mRNA vaccine or 2 months since the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, please do get your booster vaccine. And still obviously encouraging kids to get vaccinated. So those for 5 and 11, please get vaccinated. We definitely are still seeing kids getting COVID and children being hospitalized for COVID. I think LA County reported a 14-month-old that died recently. So it is still, even though obviously under 5 can't get vaccinated, it's still really important to get our kids vaccinated. Again, side effects are pretty minimal, honestly, with the 5 and 11 crowd. of children, really not as many side effects as we may be have seen with adults. So definitely, I would encourage your child to get vaccinated. It's really, really important for the majority of our community. If you can get vaccinated, get vaccinated. That really is kind of the bottom line. So and I know there was a question last week about the silent Omicron. So it's not, the media has termed it stealth variant, not really silent. So it's really just a sublineage. So Omicron, they have seen a sublineage. So the original Omicron variant that came out is called a BA.1. This stealth variant or sublineage is called BA.2. There's also a BA.3 and BA.4. This one they're kind of seeing more in Europe. So Denmark and I believe the UK, they're seeing about half of their Omicron cases are this BA.2 sublineage that they are concerned is more contagious. So it's more easily it's really contagious. So, if you have it, you're able to get it to more people. So there's definitely concerns for this BA.2. The reason it's called a stealth variant is only because on the PCR test, it doesn't have the signature signal that the BA.1 had, but it still is COVID. It still pops up positive on PCR tests. It's just that you need to identify it with further sequencing. So it really isn't silent or stealth. You can still, it's just a different sublineage. It's just like we had different sublineages with Delta and Alpha and Beta, and so it's just a different sublineage. But they are obviously watching it. There are cases of the BA.2 here in California and the U.S. So it's obviously something we watch. We always watch what's going on in other countries because for some reason the U.S. always kind of tends to get it after what's going on in other countries like Africa or Europe. So we are obviously watching it still, but all the experts are predicting that it's not going to really significantly change anything going on for us at this point. But again, who knows? And even though Omicron may be milder at this point, it doesn't mean that other variants may be even more mild than the current one. Another mutation that could occur can definitely be more serious than this variant, which is why it is still important to get vaccinated. So that really is an important thing. If you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. The more people who can get vaccinated, the less mutations may be occurring in the future. So we're definitely not over this pandemic anytime soon at this point. But time will tell, how everything comes out. But still, it is obviously the vaccine is still important. We are definitely watching the BA.2 sublineage of Omicron to see if it's going to change anything in the normal or in the patterns that we've seen with different surges. So again, just another reason to get vaccinated, to continue with the mitigations. All of that is still really, really important. For Edwards Air Force Base, for the Med Group, we have vaccination days. So next Wednesday is another vaccination day where we are still giving out our Pfizer vaccine for anyone 12 and older. Please do sign up for an appointment, although there have been appointments already taken for that day. But we are still giving out Pfizer for 12 and older for Wednesday. And then next Thursday, February 3rd, we're giving out the pediatric vaccine for 5 to 11. Again, to get that vaccine, just make an appointment. And then after next week, we are actually going to be switching our vaccine for those 18 and older to Moderna. And the reason for that is because the DoD is trying to keep all the Pfizer vaccine that we have right now available for those who are still unvaccinated in the DoD. For active duty that are unvaccinated. So we were ordered not to give out any more Pfizer vaccine for those 12 and older. So we did switch out to Moderna. So we will, so after next week, the next session, we will have Moderna vaccine available for boosters and for primary series. So so you can still sign up for the Wednesday clinic, but it will be Moderna vaccine after next week. We are still giving out Pfizer vaccine for those 5 and 11. And that will continue every three weeks. So starting February 3rd, and I believe there's another session February 24th. So that will go on every 3 weeks for 5 and 11. And then we'll be able to give Moderna for those 18 and older. The only population we can't give vaccinations for now is those that are 12 to 17. So if you have a child who's 12 to 17-year-old that you want them to get vaccinated, there are a lot of community sites that do give out vaccines. So Palmdale Oasis Recreation Center has a really good vaccines center, AB Health Center. There's a lot of places that will, different pharmacies and things like that. So encourage your teenagers to get vaccinated. but we unfortunately after next week won't be able to provide that vaccine at this time. The other news is at our test center, we do have our that antigen test back yet. So these tests are again, that guidance is if you have COVID and at day 5 your symptoms are pretty much gone and you want to try to get back to work or get back to work sooner, and it's kind of required that you need to get back to work in person sooner than the isolation period of 10 days. You can do an antigen test, and if that antigen test is negative at day 5 with no symptoms and you can wear a mask really well for the next 5 days, then you're able to be out of isolation on day 6. So that is a test that we do have available again at the test center at the med group. So if that's something that you've talked with your supervisor and you kind of need, then you can go ahead and get that. As a reminder, you do not need a test out of isolation at 10 days. So if you have done your 10-day period, please do not come to the med group to get tested. There is no reason for that. It's really just going to confuse issues. So if you've isolated for 10 days, you're good to go. You do not have to test. Another reminder, if you've had COVID, please don't test. Unless you're doing the test out of isolation, don't test for the next 90 days. There's no real reason for that. So the CDC guidance is if you've had COVID, you do not need to test, you do not need to quarantine for the next 90 days. If you do become symptomatic for some reason that with COVID-like symptoms in the next 90 days, please just talk to your primary care doctor about management, but you don't have to test. Saying that as well, there is that screening program, the weekly surveillance program for those who are not fully vaccinated. If you're not fully vaccinated and you work on the installation, you do have to be part of this weekly surveillance testing. If you've had COVID in the last 90 days, you're exempt from that testing, but that is something that you need to work out with your supervisor, your management, to be kind of exempted from. So please work that out with your supervisor. Supervisors should know if you've had COVID or not, and if you need to do that weekly surveillance test. But yes, if you've had COVID in the last 90 days, you do not need a test. But that's something that a supervisor and you have to work out for, because it is a management program for that weekly surveillance test. So those are kind of things I had from the med group and the installation. I do want to say that please continue with all these mitigations. Again, I'm kind of double masked again, and that really is the guidance out there is to get to be double masked with at least a surgical mask underneath, a fitted surgical mask, or using that KF94 or KN95 or N95. That is really kind of the recommendation at this point to upgrade mask wear. Such a big recommendation that actually in LA County schools, they are requiring that first for students for LA County schools. So that really is something that I would highly recommend. Masking is very, very important to mitigate. I know we're all kind of COVID fatigued. I was reminded that today is the 2-year anniversary of when March Air Reserve Base actually got orders to get ready for the first flight out of Wuhan for those from China to quarantine. So March Air Reserve Base got those orders that they had to basically host that. And I was honored to be kind of part of that team to go down there, and under the amazing leadership of General Coburn. She had to get together all these different agencies, including the CDC and CUNY leadership and multiple agencies to try to come up with a response to basically house those who are coming out from Wuhan. We think we had over 200 people that we had to figure out how to quarantine them. It was the first official quarantine in the U.S. since 1950. So it was a really, really big deal. And we had to do it without having really any knowledge of this virus or any knowledge of how to protect ourselves as well as those on the installation. So it was really amazing and an honor and privilege to be able to work with that team and with General Coburn. But I understand COVID fatigue with that because I've been doing this for 2 years. But again, every day is a different day, and every day we are able to learn something new, which is exciting. We are able to leverage technology, leverage different ways of doing things. It continues to, keep us trying to figure out different ways of how to mitigate and how to still do our normal daily lives, get our mission done. And I think some of those new innovative ways are some things that definitely can continue to stay, such as some of the telework and tele options, which are amazing. So, there's some goodness with all that, and I say just kind of keep on embracing that goodness and keep on with the fight. One day the virus will become more endemic, and maybe some of these mitigations may not be as needed, but we're all still part of the fight. We're all still continue to do the right things and continue to learn and continue just to be able to be very flexible. Really flexibility right now is the key to this pandemic, to just expect the unpredictable and just keep going. So I appreciate everybody for hanging in there, and hopefully everyone has a good weekend.
Ma'am, I have a quick question. So you talked about the stealth variant. Are there any differences in symptoms in the research that shows from one variant, the original Omicron variant, to this new one that you know of?
No, for right now, it's still mild. It's still considered to be a mild, possibly mild illness. So nothing that I have seen or heard of yet. But it is just something that's starting up new. So, there's definitely more information that's going to be needed.
Sure. All right. Well, I think the phones are blowing up a little bit. Captain O, what do you got for us in regards to questions?
Cool. So the first question, actually, for Sergeant Strapp, if
All
you
right.
don't mind, it's going to be about the Black History programs and events. And the question was, will it be limited to base family participants only? I know, depending on the HPCon level, I know that's always going to be the driving factor.
Access to the base will
yes.
still apply, those sort of things.
But pending that, who's going to be available or able to participate for those programs?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. With the COVID restrictions that we do have going on right now, we tried to gear most of these events to virtual events. So with that being said, max participation will probably be way higher than what we would try to do if we tried to do some in person. So those links and times will be pushed out in the PA announcement, and I don't see any restrictions as far as just Edwards Air Force Base. So,
If you don't mind, if you could also push the flyer out so we can hang that on the Edwards app
sure.
as well, so that people have everything right there. And, just in case their email's not available to them at the moment, they can go out there and look on their phone and see what's coming up for the week or the week after that.
for sure,
sort of
Chief.
thing.
Yeah, we'll definitely get that out on multiple platforms, not just PA. So we'll make sure
Sure.
that the community has their options to get on board with that.
Awesome. That's a good question. Anything else, sir?
We have one more, another question regarding vaccinations. So, Colonel Westy, for you, will the Moderna vaccine, will it be available for non-active duty, like DoD civilians,
Yes.
to get boosters?
Right, yes. So, yeah, good question. So just like how we've been doing it, it's basically available for pretty much anyone that can be on base. The Moderna vaccine will be available for anybody as well. It's just the Pfizer vaccine right now, again, is being limited to just active duty who have not been fully vaccinated. But the Moderna vaccine will be available to everybody once we get that on board, like I said, not next week, but the week after.
And ma'am, can you touch on just a little bit? I know, at least in my household, we've received our 4 free test kits that you were able to go out on the covidtest.org, I believe is the site. Can you talk a little bit about how those can help out, take off some of the load from the med group, as we're having people that are exposed or just curious if they're symptomatic or whatnot?
Right. Yeah, so those antigen test kits are amazing to have in your back pocket if you need it. So if you do feel sick, you can definitely use the antigen test to see if it's COVID or not. And again, right now, with how high it is in the community, if that test is positive, even if it's like weakly positive, where you just see a little bit of that faint pink line, it's still COVID. So with that information, you just basically know that you have COVID and you should stay home. So that's really where it is very helpful. If you're sick, you really don't have to go anywhere, right? If you're not feeling well, you don't have to drive in your car and have to go somewhere. You can use those kits to really know right away if you have COVID or not. So I think that's really, really helpful to have. Those kits are also helpful, especially if you're trying to go somewhere, like, or if you just travel, that those type of events. You could try to do those kits. You could, as a manufacturer, recommendation, do the 2 tests. So it's 2 tests at least 24 hours apart, like in a 3-day period. That's the normal antigen test instructions. So, if you're going to somewhere like a big event, like a wedding or something like that, you just want to make sure that you're not going to have COVID when you go there, or even if you've traveled and you're coming back and you just want to make sure you're not going back to the workplace with COVID, you can certainly use those tests to just help with more information that, hey, I have 2 negative tests, 24 hours apart, most likely I don't have COVID and it's safe for me to proceed. Obviously, continue mitigations and things like that, but it just gives you a little bit more information and gives a little bit more ability to kind of have that security that your test is negative. So again, those are some of the purposes of the antigen test. If you've had a close contact with somebody, you're trying to test, you could potentially test 3 to 7 day period after the exposure, and again, just do those 2 tests with the antigen test, and then that'll give you a little bit more information. If your exposure could potentially be COVID and you just don't have symptoms yet. So those really do help in those cases.
Sounds good. Anything else, sir?
Yes. If you have COVID, how long do you have to wait before you can get the booster shot?
Okay, that's a good question. I know that question's come up a lot of times. So you basically, you don't necessarily have to wait as long as you're recovered, i.e. out of isolation, and you're, kind of going back to work and going back to places. You really don't have to wait. There's not a waiting period after you've had COVID to get the booster dose, or to get even the COVID vaccine if you haven't gotten that yet. So it's more of, obviously, if you're isolated, you're contagious, so you don't want to spread it to others who around you. So once you're out of isolation, you can get the vaccine.
Ma'am, is there any discussion as we talk through the boosters, and then, eventually there's probably going to be another series of boosters at some point. Is there going to come a point where, I don't know, it's kind of hard for me to even formulate this, like, we're not going to need, I don't know, are they advancing the boosters to be long enough so that you don't have to get one every 6 months? And do you know if that's going on, or in the research is that being identified? And
I mean, definitely, they're still researching vaccination and booster and everything like that. But like I said, the pandemic is still, honestly, in kind of an infantile stage. Like, it's still new, right? This virus is still new. There's still a lot of things we're learning about. Still a lot of things that kind of create this pandemic. The fact that a lot of the world is still unvaccinated does not help. So really, until probably the entire world's about 95% vaccinated, that may change the game on it a little bit. But really, the boosters are to help kind of get that immunity back to where the first 2 doses were. So, but honestly, this is not unheard of with boosters. Pretty much every single routine vaccine that we've given, there's the primary series where you get maybe 1 or 2 or multiple shots to get a primary immune response, and then a booster basically to get that secondary immune response. So it's kind of like, you learn how to write, and then then you get tested. Maybe that's not a good example, but it's where you basically kind of set that page, and you kind of get your immune system to kind of know what to do for the response. And that booster is really just kind of hitting it home and just making sure that your immune system is good to go with it, and it'll remember it right away.
at that point, you can write in cursive.
Right, yeah, maybe cursive. Yeah, exactly. You have to get the basics, and then add the cursive for more things. Exactly. So really, with a lot of our vaccine series, it's the same thing, like the MMR vaccine, right? Everybody knows, hey, you get an MMR, not everybody, but you get that MMR vaccine when you're a year old. So that's your primary series, but you have to get that second MMR vaccine when you're 4 years old, and that's really a booster vaccine. That's so MMR, other vaccines are the same for the primary series. Hepatitis B is a really good example. You get a 3-dose series, so the first 2 are your primary series, and then you get one 6 months after the second dose, and that's your booster. So really, all vaccines are pretty much like that. You always get a primary series and then get a booster at the second stage. Things like chickenpox, when the varicella vaccine came out, it was 1 dose, and they thought that was good enough. But then they started to see more breakthroughs. They started seeing more chickenpox increase again after years after that vaccine had been out. And so, it was decided that a booster dose was needed to basically, kind of stamp that in stone. So that's really where we're seeing this, is that booster basically gets your immune system to really know what the message is and be able to kind of, create those antibodies right away in the face of different variants and things like that. So, it may not be a different booster that's needed. It's just boosting your immune response to remember the antibodies, the antibody message that it was given in the first place. When you maybe write something out and then you have to kind of really study it to kind of get in your brain. That's kind of what the situation is. So that's why this booster is really important, is because really most people got maybe that primary immune response, but not a lot of people got that secondary immune response where it's really kind of pushed in and the immune system really remembers that. So that's what the booster does. And like I said, it's pretty normal in pretty much all the vaccine series that you get a booster dose. People just don't know it. People just think, hepatitis B is 3 doses, or my hepatitis A vaccine was 2 doses. Even tetanus, you just get whatever the DTaP that you get for kids. But really, it's that booster dose. That last dose is really usually a booster dose. Now, for this virus, obviously, again, there's still a lot of unknowns. So we're not sure if there's gonna be a need for another booster dose. Israel has started a 4th booster dose, which is the exact same dose as it's really the exact same dose as the first, second, third dose for Pfizer. But because Israel has been kind of for some reason they've had this pandemic be there a little bit longer than the U.S. So we're definitely learning a lot from what Israel is doing, and not the pandemic, but the Pfizer. They were able to give out that vaccine before the U.S. was. So we're learning a lot from what Israel's been doing for the vaccine. So they were noting that they were starting to see again some a waning in immunity, even for people that had 3 doses. And so they recently recommended giving a 4th dose to people who are at more high risk, like those who are immunocompromised or older. They basically saw the efficacy of the vaccine kind of go back to what the 3rd dose was, but not as high of an effectiveness as maybe they were hoping to see. So I really don't know. It could be that 3 doses is good enough, and this is what it is. And as more people get boosted, it'll help. But again, if more mutations occur, or we start seeing more waning immunity and things like that, we all may need another booster. I know they are working on like Omicron vaccine and other variant vaccine. But really, it may not be needed. It may just be, that we just need to get everybody boosted at this point. So there's a lot of unknowns right now. They're definitely researching it, obviously. But the main point right now is to get what is being offered. So again, getting that booster is still really important to get that secondary immune response. We do know that 3 doses is a lot more effective than even the first 2 doses, although that primary series obviously is a lot more effective than just not being vaccinated. So it is really important, again, to be up to date on your vaccine. So that's really the main point. As much as we know right now, that's all we can do right now is to just make sure that we're updated. Yes, definitely more may be coming on the way as we get more information. There may be some changes as we go through this, but right now, just get that booster. And really that Moderna, if you had Pfizer, you can get Moderna. If you have Moderna, you can get Moderna or Pfizer. So it doesn't matter what that booster vaccine is. It's just important to get it.
Yes, ma'am. I understand that. It's hard to predict. You can't predict, rather. There's a lot of uncertainties. I just know that that's one of the questions that continues to come up, and I want them to hear from the expert. So, yes, ma'am. I appreciate you on that one. Captain O, what do you got?
Give me a quick minute while I can catch up on some of these questions.
Okay.
This is regarding vaccinations. Colonel Westy, can an initial Pfizer dose be followed by a Moderna for the 2nd dose?
That's not in the CDC guidance for that to happen. So if you got Pfizer as your 1st dose, it's recommended to get Pfizer again for your 2nd dose. The only thing in the guidance is the booster doses can be a mix and match, but not really necessarily the primary doses. That's all I can say at this point for that, because that's what the guidance is. So I would highly recommend just following the guidance for that, and going from there. If for some reason you can't get like if you got a Pfizer vaccine, for some reason there's no way you can get another Pfizer vaccine. There is in the interim guidance that if you happen to get a Moderna vaccine, it's not like you have to restart the whole series again. So it'll probably still work. So you're probably still okay, but I'm just saying the guidance is to get the first 2 doses. The official guidance is your first 2 doses should be in the same series. But again, if for some reason you can't get the same series for that second dose that you got for the primary, it is allowable to get a different brand for your second dose. So that is in the CDC guidance. It's not preferred, but it is allowable where you don't have to repeat a series.
Sure. Anything else coming in? Thank you for texting in your questions, by the way. We appreciate that. That allows us to, get the information while we have our experts available. So please keep them coming. And if we don't have an answer, we can definitely phone a friend or we can get that information to you at a later time. But please continue to chime in. Anything else, sir?
Yes, I'm just trying to understand this question before I ask it completely.
Sure. Take your time. So what do you got planned for the weekend?
Oh,
Nothing, apparently.
nothing.
That's fair. Sometimes that's the best way.
Yeah, like I told you before we went on air, it seems like every day is a Monday.
Sure.
So definitely take advantage of those off days to reset. Just got some renovations done at the house, so a lot of that is kind of getting the house back to normal.
Nice.
So relaxing is trying to do that. So
Sometimes those are the best weekends. I was just discussing it with someone offline about last weekend, asking what their plans were. And sometimes, especially now, just being able to just
take
relax.
a leave, not do anything.
Yeah, relax and just focus on you, to have some me time, just kind of catch up on whatever your hobbies and read a book or whatever that is, but to just let your brain rest. Sometimes that's the best weekend. And we all need to do that. Not everybody's good about doing that, but it's good to encourage folks to do that. So I'm giving you permission.
Appreciate
to
that.
just take it easy.
Appreciate that. I try to.
Yes, sir. So anything, sir?
So we did have a question. I gave Colonel Westy the phone to kind of look at the question because I didn't quite know how to answer or how to ask it, but I think Colonel Westy knows how to address it.
Sure.
So I think the question is more about natural immunity, and obviously there is some natural immunity. So if you do get COVID, again, you shouldn't need to test or quarantine for 90 days because you do have some natural immunity with that. The really difference between natural immunity and vaccinated immunity, both of them obviously can wane in time with immunity, but the vaccine gives you a kind of a broader range of immunity, while the natural immunity may give you more of a depth of immunity. We are seeing it wane, and I can only point to how Delta was a huge surge, especially in some of our regions like Florida. We did see a huge Delta caseload, and but they're also still seeing Omicron. And there's multiple stories and multiple studies that showed that people did get reinfected. So if they got Delta, they got Omicron. So, if natural immunity was a permanent thing that you would never get COVID again type of thing, that's definitely not true. So that really is the point. Natural immunity still, even with that, we've definitely seen the immunity wane and go away. So it's there, but it's not good enough. I guess I would say, it's only really, you may only be really immune to that particular variant, sublineage, all that kind of stuff, but you can still get infected again and still have severe illness again, more severe than if you were vaccinated. So that's really the point, that vaccination really gives you a very broad spectrum immunity that really does decrease your risk level for having a severe illness. And the natural immunity does not give you that. Obviously, if you've had COVID and you're vaccinated, hey, maybe you're even more protected than if you were just, than just vaccinated or did not have that vaccine. So, so all I can say is that definitely get the vaccine, because even if you've had COVID, it'll still give you a better protection than if you're not vaccinated for the next variants or sublineages or things that come through. So that really is a recommendation. No one's discounting natural immunity. It definitely is there. But that vaccine gives you increased protection over just having had COVID.
Sure.
I think the other question that came up was about monoclonal antibodies, and I'm not exactly sure what the question was because it mentioned something about stringent. So I will say that some of the monoclonal antibodies like Regeneron are no longer FDA authorized because they have not seen it being very effective with Omicron. Obviously, any medication treatment can give you side effects, and with some of those like Regeneron, they did not see any benefit. They didn't see that the benefit outweighed the risk of that medication or that monoclonal antibody. So as this pandemic has continued and the virus is being more studied and has changed over time, we're definitely developing more antivirals, and that really is going to be a lot of the key to this, in the future of having antivirals. But the antivirals have to work, right? So some of the antivirals like Regeneron, some of have been noted not to work at this point, so it's not indicated. But there are other options that are working, and definitely, definitely. The government is trying to procure those other treatments and have that more readily available in the community. So I know there's more antiviral medication that's coming through and that are more pill form versus having to go to like an infusion center to get an infusion. So that really is going to be the future, is these antiviral medication, just like we have Tamiflu for flu to kind of decrease severity. That will definitely be the future probably for COVID. But again, all this is still very much an infant stage, and we're still learning about the virus. We're still trying to respond effectively and trying to forecast and predict and be able to provide treatment and use technology. I can say the technology that has been done has been very innovative, and definitely more to come on all this stuff. But that antiviral definitely will be a key. But there's no reason to have treatment or have things that don't work, and that is being studied. I know this wasn't a question, but ivermectin's obviously been in the news a lot in the last year, and people do study that. People are studying the effectiveness of different things that have come up, and they can. It's scientific, evidence-based medicine that shows it doesn't really work. So again, evidence-based medicine is being used, and so some of the products that we were able to develop for the other variants that were very successful, unfortunately, is not as successful with Omicron right now. So things are going to keep changing, and again, flexibility is really the key to all this.
Sure. All right, Captain O, what do you got now for us?
So I wanted to so this is a question and answer combo here. So at the end of this month, the question was, what's the status of the BAH rate for TLF?
Yes, that is expiring.
Yes.
And so 1 February, we'll be back to full price for our lodging folks.
Yes,
sir.
Chief. However, we wanted to at least highlight that the Air Force is currently looking at another way to offset the cost via the temporary lodging allowance.
Yes, sir.
That the wing has submitted an ETP that is still in court, and we are still waiting to get an answer for offering the reduced costs.
Yes, sir. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm surprised it didn't come up sooner. I was hoping that by now, as we roll into the last or almost the last few days of the month, that we would have an answer as to whether or not we were going to receive an extension for that BAH rate cap, but still nothing. Hopefully that's being worked. As you said, the Air Force is looking into it, so hopefully they'll have some information sooner rather than later as folks start to come out of pocket and rolling into February with that. So more to follow on that. That information has been pushed up for question. We're just waiting for the message to get back down to this level so that we can get that out to everybody. So we will definitely follow up and let you all know. And is that about it for us? Okay, well, we still got a few minutes. I will do a quick plug for the book club. I'm sure Sergeant Miller from CE would appreciate that. We are on our third book for the book club. We are working on Outliers at the moment. So our meeting will be Monday to discuss Outliers, and then we'll roll into the book for February. So if he's listening, he can let me know what the book for February is going to be and phone that in. But if you haven't had a chance to join us for the book club discussions, Please be on the lookout for up and coming books that you might be interested in. I don't expect everyone to chime in every single book, but there are some good discussions. We've had a good turnout. We've had civilians, we've had officers, enlisted, it doesn't matter. Anyone's welcome to do that. Dependents could join us if they would like to. And it's just been really good. We've made it a hybrid thing where we spread out in the theater, but we also allow our virtual audience to participate as well. And I think we've done a great job with that. And so I appreciate Sergeant Miller for running that and keeping that going. So look forward to seeing you all if you're going to be there for Outliers, and in the future for any other books that we might be able to pull you in on. So how about now? I think I hear some buzzing. So we might have a question. 1 second.
Not quite a question, but more of a shout out
Okay, we got some
for
shout-outs.
Med Group.
Yeah.
They wanted to say that thank you so much for all the hard work you guys do on a daily basis. It's very appreciated, more than you can realize and know.
That can't be said enough, ma'am. That is absolutely a sentiment that should be echoed. A lot of stuff going on with COVID, with vaccines and mandates and all sorts of stuff, and your organization has been nonstop. So I always try to give a shout out to Colonel Lamoff and Chief Patterson and the whole team, public health and everybody, for the awesome job that you all do. And so I appreciate whoever phoned that in. That was on spot on and was right on time. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Nothing at the moment.
What's going on in Defenderland? Anything
We're busy.
exciting?
We're busy.
You guys are another thankless job
Thank you.
situation. So shout out to the defenders who are always keeping
Well-
us safe from the perimeter all the way within. So you guys do a lot as well. We appreciate it. It's nonstop.
Nonstop.
That blotter is always,
Oh, buddy.
moving, and so we also want to make sure that we are acknowledging the goodness that you guys bring to the table too. You guys have some folks that you're pushing up for recognition, and that can't be, we need to do that as often as possible for all the hard work that you guys put in on that. So, like I said, thank you for joining me on the show and
problem.
letting
Thank
us
you
know
for
what's
inviting
coming
me.
up. Yeah, letting us know what's coming up for the month of February. We look forward to getting out there and participating in some of that. Like I said, the book club is coming up, or the book club meeting is coming up next week. So if you're able to join for that, we've got our blood drive on the 1st and 2nd of February. So 9 to 3 on both days at the Oasis Club. So if you want to set up an appointment, don't forget to go out to www.redcrossblood.org and enter OASIS. It says